Welcome, friends. It's Miss Gisa, and today I have a special guest, Dr. Deven Tellis, and she is a teacher and also an author of a new book called Who's to Say. Hi, Dr. Deven, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your book?
Absolutely. I am a teacher, like you said. I'm also a mommy and a wife. So all of those things kind of go underneath my author hat. They kind of feed into what I've been doing as a writer. My background is in foreign language education, and my writing background is just something that's always been there. So I'm excited to be at this point and have something to share with you guys.
So, Dr. Deven, we call you doctor, and most kids and people think of doctor as someone who works in a hospital or a clinic. Can you explain your title?
Yes. So I guess from an education standpoint, doctor is something to signify that you are an expert in a certain subject matter. So, for example, my doctorate degree is in curriculum and instruction. So that means that I'm really good at planning lessons for students and making sure that you meet your learning goals and doing creative things to facilitate the learning process. So that would make me a doctor of education. Whereas a doctor of medicine would have their same expertise or the same things that they're good at, but inside of the medical realm.
Thank you. That was a great explanation. Your book, Who's to Say, just gave me tingles when I just
Oh,
really, when I read it, I love the illustrations. I love the story. It is so uplifting and encouraging. And I think it's just what every kiddo needs. Um, there are so many instances in life and with friends and even with adults where kids
oh
hear
yeah.
such negative messaging. Um, and this is just so positive. Can you tell us what inspired you to write this story?
Yeah. So given everything that's going on right now in the world and people having to be at home and be isolated and different changes with jobs and family dynamics that we've all had to face in this time downtime that we've had due to the pandemic. I'm sure it has stirred up a lot of emotions that we weren't necessarily prepared to deal with. And it's very easy to fall into a rut or fall into a pattern of negative thinking.
Mhm.
And same for when the world was open and we would come in contact day to day with people, whether it be at school or at our jobs. Um, our interactions aren't always positive. So it's very easy for that to become a habitual part of your existence. You can begin to either believe what people are saying to you or about you that's not positive, and you can begin to internalize those things. You could start saying those things to yourself unconsciously. And to me, that's important to sort of combat, if that makes sense. So, having a background in education, you have students from all walks of life, and you can identify those students who are missing those key nurturing components. And it's really easy to see those holes in that foundation. Whereas on the other hand, you can see students who have those pieces, those key pieces, and how much easier they adapt and how much more successful they are in the long run as students and then as adults. So all of that together, and even, as a mom and watching my kids and how they interact, it just made sense for me to kind of put this message on paper. First I was talking to my kids. This is what I wanted them to know and what I wanted them to be comfortable with saying, and foster that thinking early on, that positive
Yes.
thinking.
Yeah. So
And
important.
then once I got it on paper, I said, well, I needed those reminders as well. Because as adults, we have so many things, so many hats that we wear. And sometimes it's easy to forget that if you have kids or little people in your lives, they're watching you and soaking up what you do and how you handle and how you maneuver things. So
Absolutely.
I think it's also a great reminder to us that, hey, we need to be at our best and, have these great habits as soon as possible, as early on as we can, so that we can continue to nurture those things in our kids. So that's kind of where all of this started. It was just a message that I felt like we needed to get out and share.
Yes. Yes. And many of us didn't grow up with those positive affirmations. So, we don't know how to model those. So
Exactly. You can only model what you've been taught or what you've experienced. Thankfully, my parents have been and still are super supportive, and they always poured into me and they poured into my sister, and it's awesome. And I know that everybody doesn't have that.
right.
And the crazy thing is, though, even though you might have grown up with that, it's really easy to forget that when you get out into the world and
And get a little
things
beat up.
just, yeah, you get a little beat up. I hate to sound jaded, but sometimes it happens that way. You get a little beat up and you get a little bogged down. And so it's a nice reminder that those things are core values that are still there, that just kind of need a little wake up,
Yes.
or
Yes.
refresher.
And the characters in the book, tell us a little bit about how you came up with
Yes.
those.
Okay. So I have a son who's 12 and a daughter who's 8. And they are inspiration for the characters. They are the characters. I never give their names in the book because I want all children to be able to relate to, there's a boy character and a girl character
Yes.
that's going, that's having throughout the book. But they are definitely my inspiration because I'm talking to them primarily
Yes.
in this book. So I was able to have my illustrator create the characters in their likeness. So, I chose one of my favorite pictures of them and sent it over to her. And she said, sure, I can definitely make your characters in the likeness of your kids. So it's been really cool for them to see themselves actually in a book or on a cover of a book. So I'm just really pleased at how it turned out.
This brings me to another reason why I love your book. I seek out diversity in the books that I buy, and the characters, because traditionally speaking, there's been a big void with having representation in children's literature. And I think the last few years, things have definitely gotten better. Lots more books on the shelves, diversity of all kinds, right? Cultures, skin
Yes.
colors, celebrations, foods, holidays, but we
Mm-hmm.
still have a long way to go. If you
Yes.
look at the percentages of, books that do have diverse characters, we have a long way to go.
I agree with you on that. It is very important that kids, people, we all feel represented in some sort of way in literature. And that was another driving force behind my first book project as well. Not only did I want to have a positive message to share with my kids and to sort of leave a legacy in that regard, but
Yeah.
I wanted them to be proud and excited and just really engaged by the fact that they could relate to the characters in the book. They are the characters in the book.
Yes.
And if I could make that happen for my kids, I want it to kind of resonate with other kids, that would get the book as well. It's just really important from a fundamental standpoint of being able to, we want to plug ourselves in somewhere, be able to find where we fit in, so to
Yes.
speak. And if we can create that platform, kind of a blank canvas, but not a blank canvas,
Yes.
So that the kids can start to have those positive thoughts and start imagining and thinking outside the box and seeing themselves in these different situations, then I think that's an awesome effect to have, or something that we can put out into the world.
Yeah.
So I really was excited to see that for your school, you guys have libraries where you're very intentional about the books that you are bringing in, because my kids know that not everybody looks like them, and they know that they don't look like everybody, but that's okay. And as long as we're seeing all of these different beautiful people that God created, and learning how to get along with them and understand their differences and things of that nature, I think we're headed in the right direction.
Yeah. Dr. Deven, I like to think about it as raising global citizens, right?
Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know personally as a child, I was a huge reader. And also as an adult, I look for characters that I can identify with. Um, and I think that's so important for kids to be able to see themselves in these characters. I mean, that's where they will be inspired and want to keep reading. And it also, helps parents start conversations. We don't know about every single culture and every single food and every single holiday that's out there. So I feel like children's books are such a great, like, jumping off point to get started with those conversations and to explore, how other people do things and how other people live.
I agree with that. Definitely for the conversation starters. There is no manual to parenting, and sometimes it's really tough to have conversations that you need to have with your kids, and you worry about the wording, how you say it, how to present it to them, and
Right.
how to make it something that they can understand for their age level. All of those things go into play, and I really do appreciate and love the fact that the platform for children's books allows you to kind of bridge that gap. So diversity is definitely a big one. Some kids don't come in contact with people that don't look like them. And
Right.
it's great. And it's great to start those conversations to let them know that, they're not an island. This world is a melting pot.
Right.
And, here what some people look like.
Yeah.
They're people like you, they have experiences like you. So it's great to start that conversation about finding commonalities. And also, like you said, with the holidays and food and culture, all of that. Now that I think about it, I focused on a lot of that in the foreign language classroom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In the U.S., and this is stereotypical, but it's out there. People tend to think that Americans believe that their way is the best way and nothing else matters, so to speak. When this is what you hear when you travel abroad and you're afraid to say, yes, I'm from the United States.
Yes.
But in my foreign language classes, I was very intentional about the cultural units, because there's more to a culture or people than just the language that they speak. All of these different facets make up a culture.
Yes.
And the earlier that we can start exposing our kids to those sorts of things and looking for connections, embracing the differences, I think, like I said, we'd be on a great path to success. And
Yes.
what better way to weave it in and not make it such a big deal to where, your kids want to shy away from it, than to put it in a story.
Yeah.
And it just makes it more accessible. And for families to share and for kids to kind of absorb on their own.
Yes. Yeah. And as a parent, I don't know about every culture that's out there
We don't
and
know
customs that
everything.
are out there.
Yeah.
So for me, having a resource in a book, is invaluable.
Absolutely. Yeah. We don't want to have to make up things that might not be correct.
Right.
Go straight to the source and
Right.
share it with your kids.
Yeah. Do you have a special place that you like to do your writing?
I have two places. The beach, when I can get there, and any sort of bookstore or library that has a little nook. Those are happy places for me. And I tend to be my most creative when I'm in those happy places. Generally, from day to day, though, when I'm inspired by something, I just kind of write it. I take it as it goes, and I might jot it down in my notebook and visit it later.
Okay.
And things tend to come to me backwards, if that makes sense. So for this book, the title and the repetitive phrase came to me first.
Okay.
And so I wrote that down. So I had who's to say came to me, and I wrote it down. And then the rhythm of the book, if you will, or the structure came to me, and I wrote it down.
Which I love,
And then,
by the way.
yeah, thank you. And then I filled in the gaps. that's been sort of a pattern in my children's book writing.
Okay.
So I
I
don't think
love to hear the process because everyone has a different process.
everybody's is different.
Mhm.
And, in talking to other people, I have found that mine is, I don't want to say it's strange, but I have not come across anyone else who writes backwards.
And what do you find is the most challenging part of writing for you?
I have run into, for me, the most challenging part is at the very end when it's just about to be ready to, maybe go to an editor or be the finished product. Just the last few little tweaks, just getting it the way I want, I always feel like takes an eternity. Everything
Yeah.
else comes really quickly. And then just those fine tweaks when you're going back over it yourself and you're wondering, oh my gosh, am I nitpicking this too much? And you're trying to consider all the different viewpoints and how they might process what the words have to say. To me, that's the most difficult part because you could either go all the way into just talking yourself completely out of even doing it, just saying, that's okay. I'm just going to put this on the shelf and not talk about it.
Right.
Or you can kind of push forward and grit your teeth and just say, okay, it's done. We're just going to see what happens when we put it out.
Yes.
So that to me is the hardest. The writing part is fun, but it's just that last little leg where you're critiquing and making sure it's really what you want to put out there.
Do you have any advice for our young writers?
Write, and write some more. I really don't remember a time that I was not writing, if that makes sense. I've always been a writer, and I don't think I was ever told that that's a good thing or that's okay. I knew that I had a knack for it and that I enjoyed it, but I was not ever, I guess nobody ever introduced the idea to me that, this is how you can make a living or this is how you can make an impact in the world. It was really just for me. I wrote for creative purposes. I wrote for my high school magazine or my school newspaper, and that was that. It just kind of stopped there. So I would encourage young aspiring authors to just write about everything and share it and practice the art of getting feedback because, when you do put things out there in the world, people are going to have opinions and you just have to kind of get used to how to process that. And then I also would encourage them to consider the idea that it's something that you can do for enjoyment or it's something that you could do for a career. I don't ever think that I thought about that growing up. And it's okay to do things that are untraditional. Right. As far as, making a living for yourself or your family, it's okay to do, to kind of step off of the frequently traveled path. So I would definitely encourage them to just step outside the box. And if it's something that brings you enjoyment, embrace it and find out a way to keep that as an active part of your life.
Such great advice. Such great advice. Yeah, I like that piece about sharing. Because oftentimes it is hard for people to share their art or their, writing is so personal.
It is so personal.
Yeah.
It's something that you definitely have to get comfortable with. Just sharing your work and accepting feedback and
yes,
and
feedback is hard for a lot of people. So you are working on some future projects. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yes. So who's to say? It's just being who's to say, one book. And, as I've been sharing it with different classes and, groups and adults and kids, more messages have come to me. There are more things along the same line that I feel need to be shared. So I have 2 books that I am working on currently that will complete this series. The second book that's going to be released soon is called Always Be the Light. It stems from something that I always tell my kids, and I try to encourage myself to do the same day to day. And, I love the title because it's broad yet specific, if that makes sense.
Yes.
You get the overall gist of what it means, but there's so many ways to be the light or so many different ways to interpret that. And so I kind of carry that throughout the second book, and it will still have my kids as the characters. So it's fun seeing them throughout that story.
I
The
definitely
third
need that book, Dr. Deven. I'm going to need to
yes,
have
it's
that
oh yeah.
book on my bookshelf. And yeah, tell us about your third book.
Yes. So the third book is called Good News, We Need More of It. And that's just, relevant right now. There's so much negativity in the news and just in life in general. And it's kind of my spin on just having a positive attitude. When life gives you lemons, you do your best to make lemonade.
Yes.
So that's my nod to that gesture there. And again, it'll be my kids in different situations that might not go their way, but the good news is, and that's how, and that's going to be kind of the recurring theme. So
that silver lining.
yeah, so I'm excited to have those roll out. The second one is definitely going to be here soon. And then the third one, I'll say it'll probably be ready by the time school starts. So maybe August,
Wow. You've
mid-August.
been busy.
Oh yeah, yes, I've been busy. I've been hashing out my plans and my manuscript. So I really just want to keep the ball rolling. And while everyone is on board and excited to see what's coming next. So I'm definitely excited to show those to you guys when they're done. And I'm also considering maybe a teacher's companion. I do have lots of teacher friends that are of younger grades, and some of them have already used who's to say in their classrooms.
Yes.
So teachers love using outside of the box materials, but they are more likely to use it if they come with a plan, less
yes.
for us to have to prep and do because it's already vetted. Everything is, all of the things that we want to touch on with regard to the subject matters and the books and how they're relevant to the curriculum is already there. So I have plans to work with some teacher friends who've already used my book to make sort of a teacher's guide, just to kind of make it more accessible.
Yeah.
I know not everybody can just do a read aloud in class and
Right.
then call it a day,
Right.
but just to make it a substantive experience. So those are my goals for this series.
Dr. Deven, I mean, who better to write the curriculum, for the books than you? I mean,
Yeah.
that is your expertise, right? That's your area of expertise. So, I be very interested in purchasing those as well.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I think it'll be a great thing. And
Yeah.
just especially for newer teachers, it's
Mhm.
harder sometimes to want to incorporate new things that are not exactly by the book. So if you have that little safety net or just
Mhm.
a guide that you can
Yeah,
refer to, it makes all the difference in the world. So
it does.
my goal with this is just to make it as accessible and expand the reach as far as it can go. Because I do believe in the messages that I'm writing in the books, and I do believe that they could be impactful to different communities and schools,
Yes.
and definitely adults. So whatever I can do to help further that is what I'm trying to work on right now. So we've got those 3 books, possibly the
Wonderful.
teacher's guide, and then there's the last thing is an color and activity book, because right now I like to color. It's a great stress reliever. My
Yes.
daughter is really into coloring right now and drawing, so I thought it would be a really cool idea to maybe include some of the artwork from all 3 books, and then incorporate some I guess activities that reinforce the messages, positive thinking, maybe some word search with some relevant vocabulary and things of that nature. So it kind of becomes a package deal, like an
Yeah.
all-out experience.
I love it. I love it. I think that's great,
Yeah.
because then the kids can also engage with it,
Mm-hmm.
after they've listened to the story.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your school visits? Because you do visit schools and talk
I
about your
do.
stories.
So far, all of my visits, well, actually, I'll say all of my visits have been virtual, but I've had one in-person visit. So that
Okay.
was exciting. So my virtual visits usually last about an hour.
Okay.
And I get to read the story with my classroom group that I'm online with. I usually have the kids to repeat after me. My favorite page in this book is towards the end. I am my biggest cheerleader. I'm my biggest fan. I believe in me, and I really enjoy hearing all the little voices say that how much they believe in themselves.
That just gave me
At the end
goosebumps.
of yeah, I mean, it's wonderful. It's my favorite part. And I love hearing those little voices speak up and say that at the very end.
Yeah.
And when I share with them, I also enjoy hearing what they have to say. I really am interested in their feedback. I say, guess what? I'm writing some more books, and you guys need to help me make the best books ever. So if I was to do something different, what do you suggest? Kids have no filter. They are very honest.
They'll tell
and
you what they want.
I can appreciate that, but thankfully they really haven't said that they wanted to change much. Most of them say, well, can you put me in your next book? Or when they find out that the characters are my kids, they are just like, oh my gosh, how does that work? How does that happen? So it's just been a blast. All the questions that they have, I love it. They're very inquisitive. They want to know about how do you write a book? How did you become an author?
Yes.
I guess they just really have never seen a person, like a real live author. They just never put the two and two together.
Dr. Deven, that's why I do this. I want kids to be inspired.
Yes.
And I want them to see that you're special, but you're just like them. They could do exactly what you're doing if that's
right.
what they aspire to do,
Right. So I think that's very important. I'm so glad that you're doing that, because I really did not realize that it just isn't something that's done or talked about.
It's not.
Now, when I was in school, I do remember having an author come once, but I know everybody doesn't get that opportunity.
They don't. They don't. My daughter's school, she's so blessed to have gone to an elementary school where they had several author.
That's right.
Several a year.
That's awesome.
And but not everybody gets that. So it's really nice for them to see that, authors are approachable. You can do this if you want, if it's your desire. And hear your process, and that you go through struggles just like everyone else.
Yeah, they have asked the best questions, and they have just been so enthusiastic, and that really makes the time a fun time. And that hour just goes so quickly, and you want to continue talking, but they have to go to their next class or go to PE or wherever.
Right.
But I have thoroughly enjoyed myself. I had one student suggest that I make my book available on their school platform, which is called Epic. I mean, a lot of schools use it, but it's an online database. And I believe that schools pay for a subscription. And, if they are a school where it's a 1-to-1 kid and device ratio, it's a catalog that the children have access to on that device. So, their assignment might be go in and read X number of books that are on your reading level, And the one kid was like, so why aren't you on Epic? And I'm like, that's a good point. Why aren't I on Epic? Let me see what I can do about that.
Good. That's great feedback.
Yes, that was awesome feedback, because it did not even cross my mind.
Right.
I knew about Epic, but I just, it pushed me to try to learn more about it and how they go about choosing the literature that they include on that platform. But definitely something for me to aspire to. It would, make it more accessible to more kids.
Absolutely. And kids can also be listening, because I will be reading Dr. Deven's book today.
Yay!
So you can find her story on our channel as well. Thank you for letting us read your story, Dr. Deven. And can you tell us, how else can we find you and your books?
So I am on most social media platforms. On Instagram as Dr. DMT.
Okay.
And also as Quintessential Books. My Quintessential Books page on Instagram, I kind of show a little bit about my books, but I also highlight some of my other author friends. It's just kind of how we kind of keep the camaraderie going and,
Nice.
just help show support. We're all out here to share wonderful messages with the world. So
I love
I
that.
tend to do that more on that page. I do have an author website that is drdevencreates.com. And that's where you can find out more about upcoming book projects for me, any places that I'll be featured or reading, as well as just there's some samples of my first book as well. My daughter's on the web page reading the book. So just some,
Oh, wonderful.
fun facts and just fun little tidbits that are on my author page. So that's always a good way to kind of stay abreast of what I'm doing and what's coming next.
Well, for our readers and listeners, I'm going to list all of Dr. Deven's information below in the notes. So you can find her website there. You'll find her Instagram and all the ways that you can keep up with what she's doing. Dr. Deven, it has been such a pleasure to have you with us today and to hear your story and your journey and all about what's inspired you. And we hope that you will be back with future books.
Yes, I thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun. And definitely, you guys, I am going to stop by once my next books come out so I can share that with you as well. And I'm looking forward to it.
Yay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. Remember to like and subscribe to support our channel.